All right, one of the first things we want to do is give our car the lowest ride possible. Lower center of gravity reduces the car's ability to roll and it improves stability. FYI though, if you're trying to do this to a real car, you can really mess up the suspension geometry because everyone's like, oh yeah, lower the car, it's going to handle better. It might, but your whole geometry and the way the suspension travels changes and the car's actual roll center gets moved and you may end up with a car that handles less. That's just a side note for all y'all trying to do some similar things to your actual road cars that you drive. But for the purpose of a racing game, getting as low as possible is a good start. And we're going to be likely looking at the ride height again later, depending upon what adjustments we need. So you can use this T1 setting, the save. Maybe you want to change it and save it to Zolder height adjustment because that's what we're going to do now. It doesn't matter, just so long as you know where you are. And here's what we're going to look for. We're going to look for the car bottoming out, or in this game I haven't experienced it yet, but other games, if the car's too low, I can turn the wheel and I can literally, like, my wheel here will keep turning, but the car doesn't turn anymore, and it's because the tires are rubbing the inside of the fenders. I don't know if that's going to happen with this game, but we're going to test it out and find out. So again, we want to keep it from bottoming out, and we also want to keep the tires from hitting the fender wells, if that's even going to be a thing on this game. Um, some will say, yeah, but what about the curbs? And we'll deal with that in suspension later. And again, we might have to move the suspension up a little bit. But let's just give it a test run, and we'll see where we go. Here we go. I'm going to go to suspension, and I'm going to drop this ride height all the way down, just as a trial, as, just the extreme of it. I'll leave everything else the same for now. I just want to see how the car handles. And if you look at the save on the screen, I know I'm pointing up here. It now has an asterisk in front of the Zolder Medium T1. It's recognizing that you've adjusted something. This isn't your original setting. So if you save again, it's going to write over that. So be aware. I have a tendency to save as. I'll change the name. So that each time I make an adjustment, if I don't like it, I can fall back on the previous adjustment. All right, so let's go drive this and see how we do. So the car is now very low. Now at this point, I'm going to give it more than a 3-lap stint, and I'm not going to record this whole thing just because it'll take forever. I said this would be a long process. But the tires are cold, and I really want to at least get them warmer. I know they're overinflated. We'll deal with that at our next step. I could have done it now. Just kind of lower the pressure a little bit, give it a little more handling. That wouldn't be a bad idea. But I'm just wanting to see how the car is handling all this flex and bumps and curbs. And again, granted, this being a GT4 car, I could probably slam it to the ground and not be concerned about the tires holding back. So I'm going to overrun this turn up here, and I'm just going to crank the wheel at a little bit of speed and just see how it does. Here we go. All right, so now let's do something a little bit different. Let's watch the replay. I don't know if it's going to help us at all with being able to see this. If I was driving other games, I could pan around the car while I was racing, which would be nice here. Great shot of the tarps. The car looks very low. I don't know what we're going to be able to see. My aging vision here. The front end looks super low to the ground. that tire greatly tucked in to that fender there. And again, I don't know that I've ever run a car all the way to the bottom. I just wanted to see what this would do. Seemed a little stiff on the curb, just watching the car go over those curbs. It looked all right. Man, that car looks slammed to the ground. I was driving it again. I didn't feel like there was any loss of suspension. Okay, so let's see what happens in this turn. I don't know if we're going to be able to see this or not. And I turned it pretty far in, but didn't look like anything hit. Yeah, so I couldn't tell if the tire's rubbing the top of that fender or if it has just cleared it. All right, well, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to raise it back up. And I'm just going to see what the tires do. And we'll see if this is worth anything or not. All right, so I'm going to go to vehicle setup. I'm just going to crank that right height adjustment all the way again. And we'll see what kind of shenanigans we have. All right, I have 237 minutes left.
Clear of pit lane.
Clear of pit lane. And just see what it's going to be to just totally crank those wheels around and see how they tuck in the fender. Because I'm not sure that I can feel a whole lot of difference. I think it feels better higher up than it does slam to the ground. I think there was a little bit of bumpiness, which means that the suspension probably was bottoming out. All right, let's see what we can decipher. Yeah, so suspension all the way up, the wheels all the way turned. The wheels looked the same. I didn't see any binding. So I think we're safe slamming it on the ground as far as the tires hitting the fender wells. I don't think they hit at all. But it just did feel a little bit choppier. And again, I don't ever recall setting something to the bare minimum. And I just wanted to see what it would do. And so here we are. When looking at the minimum or maximum ride height adjustments, the maximum ride height was only 1.18 inches above normal. The lowest setting is 1.18 inches beneath level. So basically, I only have about this much travel to play with anyway in real life. That much right there. So I'm just going to set the ride height at 0, front and rear. I know that'll at least give me some suspension travel on this. I'm just going to call that good for now. Again, there will be reasons to adjust it later. Just at this point, it's going to be fine. Let's at least get us moving on to the next step, which is going to be tire pressure and camber. So tire pressure and camber, here we go. All right, so we're going to look at the tires and the camber. Tire wear is shown in the game by those 4 tire icons, and the 3 columns on those icons are important. Each column represents the outer, middle, and inner tire wear and tire temperature. Tire temperature is shown by colors. If the tire is bluish, it's cold. If it's green, it's good. If it's reddish, it's too hot. Tire wear is shown by the length of those columns. And so, for example, if you were paying attention to the tire wear I had just on those trials, you would notice that the center column was shorter than the other columns, and that is true of cars in real life. If you overinflate your tires in real life, the center of that tire, as you go straight down the road, the center of it is going to wear down quicker than the outside. The opposite is true if your tires are underinflated. The outsides are going to wear quicker and the center is going to be taller. So that's how we watch tire wear. Um, for example, if you have, we're going to have negative camber on these cars, so the inner tire is likely going to wear more than the front. And again, what we're looking for is that through the track, that the color stays green on all three columns. That means that the tire's gripping well, and one section of the tire isn't overheating by being overinflated or underinflated. Can it overheat by having too much camber? Yes. For example, if you're doing a sprint, you're doing a 5 lap race and the excessive negative camber is working for you, great. You're only in a 5 lap race. You can throw a set of softs on and grind them to the ground and you're done. But if you're going to do an endurance race, you want those tires to last, whatever compound you're using. All right, so that moves us on to the topic of camber. Negative camber is where the tops of the front tires and the rear tires are closer together than the bottoms. Positive camber would be the other way, and obviously zero camber is straight up and down. Negative camber values allow the car to ride flatter when the car is body rolling in a turn. So if the car is turning right, your tires are like this, whoops, get my hands a little bit straighter here, then as the car turns to the right, it's going to lean a little bit more, and that outside tire is going to run a little flatter and give it better grip. On the straightaway, they're going to be over cambered and it's going to wear out the inside of the tire. So there's pros and cons of doing this. The pros, better handling. And yes, you do want negative camber for better handling. The downside is that the inner tire is going to wear quicker. And again, we're going to adjust this and watch the tire pressure so that we're getting this at least even across the board without excessively going one way or the other. I am tuning for more endurance racing. Like I said, if you're tuning for a sprint, you can probably run some really wide negative camber, run softs, 3 to 7 laps, you're done, and your game's over. Once I get this dialed in, we'll change the nomenclature of um, of the save settings. So maybe we'll make this Zolder tire change or Zolder 2 because it's the second step or the next step in the process. Again, whatever works for you, just make sure that you have something to fall back on because you don't want to get going from ride height to tires and camber to adjusting the spring rate and then adjusting the bump stops and then find out, these last two really aren't working and you don't have one to fall back on because you just saved as and wrote over that initial saving. So I encourage you, save as, keep your successive work, write the lap time on there, and maybe take a note on some paper of the description of how it went. And so that you can look at that and say, okay, this was better, yes or no, but it was worse here. The next one adjusted for that. The next one really made it bad. And again, and so on. So you know what to fall back on. All right, so we're going to look at tire pressure and camber. I'm going to take some laps and we're going to start adjusting things. All right, so now we're going to do some tire and camber adjustments before we go out. I brought my tire pressure down to 28 just as a starting point, and we'll see how that wear goes later. And as far as suspension, I set all of my camber to just a hair above -2, whatever value would show up on the screen here. So you can see that my front camber is -2.0-ish, and my rear camber is -2.0-ish. And so we're going to take some laps. This is going to be more laps. I'm not going to record them all, but we'll take note of the tire meters and how the tires are wearing, which portions of the tire wearing, how hot they're getting or maintaining, or even if they're cold. And we will adjust tire pressure and such from there. All right, here we go.
Hammer down now.
Oh, just off the bat, the handling feels better, at least in the slower turns. noticing right off the bat that my front left tire, the inner or the middle tire, is wearing out before the outer or the inner. So, a couple things. Oh, now the inner just caught up with it. Well, let's just leave it then. See what it does. Sorry about that. Here's what's interesting is the outer just caught up with all of them. So maybe I have some really good and even tire wear here. Whoops, that probably didn't help. So the inner is going first, or the middle is going first. On my right side, the inner and middle are now a notch below. Alright, so now the middle hit a little bit of red. Not bad. But that left front, at this point after several laps, is definitely overinflated. Right front's overinflated, if these measurements are correct. Whoops. Need to pay attention to my driving. At this point, I would say that my right front is just like barely getting up to temperature. I think I'd want a little more higher temperature in that, just for grippiness sake. And I think the proper range for this is somewhere between 190, 200, 210. My left in the 190s, I think looks good, other than the tire wear, but the color temperature looks fine. Backs could use a decrease in tire pressure as well. So if you increase your tire pressure, the tire's likely going to run cooler. If you decrease the tire pressure, the tire's going to run a little bit warmer. So that's what I'm going to do with these. Just from watching the tire wear also, the fronts are definitely wearing more in the middle. Has nothing to do with camber. It has to do with being overinflated. Overinflated? Overinflated. Overinflated. Yeah, rears are also showing a little bit of sign of overinflation. I've done, gosh, how many laps have I done? I think I've done about 7 laps. I haven't counted. Maybe less. But this shows you, you've got to get your laps in. You just, it's the only way you're going to be able to test this thing out. Okay, so definitely have overinflated tires with that middle wearing out more than the rear. So that's a rough, I think, look at what this, I'm not sure exactly how all the data is on this screen. Obviously everything here is red. But the dips in the middle are reflecting what I saw when I was driving. Did see a little more of the inner tire wear sometimes when I was driving too. So it's proof that these tires have too much air in them, because when the tire overinflates, the bottom wants to make a bubble and you're only gripping that center portion. When it underinflates, the tire tread wants to cup and then just use the outer portion. So we're going to reduce this tire. I don't know how much to reduce it. It's just trial and error at this point. I don't have a fixed figure that if you drop it down so many measures, it's automatically going to be here. It just doesn't work the way. So it's going to be trial and error. Here we go. So here we are looking at tire pressure, and I'm set on 28. I'm going to drop the front one down. Let's just go down to 26 and see what it does. Or whoops, 26-ish. 26 too. It's good enough. And I'm going to drop the rears down closer to 27. Note also, every adjustment that I'm going to make except tire pressure is going to be synchronous. What I do on the left is going to synchronize on the right. It's just easier for the sake of instruction and getting through these steps. When you start fine tuning your car, you're going to want to have a little bit of a different adjustment on the right left. For example, your left rear might be a -3 camber, or your right rear, you might want to put like a -2.6. It's going to be up to you in the way that you watch your tire wear, the way your car handles, and so forth. Again, just for instruction, I'm going to make them synchronize left and right, except tire pressure. Tire pressure, I will adjust those individually. All right, so I'm going to want to adjust the tires individually, which means when I get there, I'm going to choose the symmetrical option and turn it off so it's asymmetrical. So this way I can adjust each tire without affecting the one on the right or the left. So I'll bump this down a few ticks on the left, a few ticks on the right. Oh, I'm sorry, on the left rear. In the right front, I'm going to drop down a full PSI measure. Let's do something similar with the right side. And as far as camber, I'm just going to leave it at this point. And let's see what we do. All right, here we go. Whoops, I'm going to save this before I get too far. I know it's camber T2, but camber and tire pressure kind of go hand in hand, so I'm not going to freak out about the nomenclature. All right, so the left front still has a little more inner tire wear. I think the left rear is the same. Right side seems to be okay, but those tires are still colder than I would like. Maybe it's going to do excessive tire wear if I reduce the tire pressure on those, but I'm going to at least try to do them a little bit here. So let's see what we get. So let's, all right, pretty extreme. Well, not necessarily. Just large adjustments. And I'll try this again.
Clear of the pits.
Okay, so I did a couple other tire temperature settings. I did not change the camber. It's still set to -3, but they didn't really help me. So I'm just going to go back to my third setting and call it good, and we'll adjust things from there. We're going to move into adjusting our spring rates now. And stiffening the spring can reduce body roll. It can reduce the car squatting. It can reduce the front end dipping down. And if it's too stiff, obviously it can result in the car sliding. So softer spring rates will handle the curbs better. Stiffer spring rates will produce less body roll. So kind of a starting point is if the car is oversteering, it's turning in too quick, increase the spring rate in the front, make that stiffer if possible. If it's understeering, then decrease the spring rate if possible. Now, as far as the rear springs, what I do is I basically adjust that spring rate to the highest that I can without the back end of that car wanting to skip around at any point in time. Because you don't want to lose the rear end in a turn. It will spin you around. All right, so here we go. We're going to try this out. All right, so what I did here is I lowered the spring rate on the front, see if it'll give me a little more grip and less push. And I raised the spring rate in the rear. Let's just see what it does.
Clear of the pits.
All right, so that was within a tenth of a second. I didn't beat my previous time. I did like the front end and the way that it felt, lowering the spring down, but I think I stiffened the rear spring too much as it just kept wanting to get out uh, and try to meet up with the front on several turns. So I'm going to reduce the spring rate on the rear and we're going to go again. All right, so this time the front end still felt good. Back end still felt the same, except I felt like I had a harder time coming out of turns when I loosened up the back end a little bit. So I'm just going to bump the back end up one more notch, which will be between what I consider my best setting and the two previous ones. And we try again. Okay, so just finished a 135.6, one or 137.7, 137.6, 137.5. So I'm happier with this one. Those are three in a row, and we'll move on to the next thing, which will be our shocks.